Good morning. How's everyone today? It's so amazing to be here, and now you can hear my accent. I feel compelled to tell you that I am not American. I'm Canadian. Yeah. I'm going to talk a little bit today about this company that I started called SheEO, but I'm also going to talk about why I'm doing it. I'm starting there. And then talking a little bit about the state of the world and how we need to really shift our mindset if we're going to get to a better place. I think this is really the critical part of everything. And then I'm going to share a few stories from what we've been doing so far, and then end with a bit of a call to action. So thank you for being here today. So my story starts with when I was 18 years old. I went off to university, studied computer science, and I had this chance to take an elective. And for some reason, I chose this course called Women in Literature, taught, of course, by a man, right? Oh, yes, those days. And I grew up in a family full of boys, super testosterone-driven. I have a very strong male side. My friends call my husband my feminine side. He's here today. He doesn't mind me saying that. But I took this course, and during the course, I started reading all these books. Germaine Greer, Simone de Beauvoir. There's like a lot of those are over there. And towards the end of the course, I started to realize, oh my God, we are really treated differently. Like, I didn't get this before. I think I was asleep for most of my life until I was 18, and then I woke up and went, oh my God, I'm oppressed. How did that happen? And I came home and I let every one of my three brothers and my father know every single time they oppressed me. I pointed out everything. Why do I have to get the dishes? Why do I have to do these things? Why aren't they doing it? And as you can imagine, after a few weeks of this, my brothers had enough. They all had enough of this, and they started calling me Germaine, for Germaine Greer. And I thought, underneath it, now I can look back and go, well, at least they knew who she was. But one of the things that I learned really early is that noticing these things and pointing them out, the unfair way women are treated in the world, wasn't getting me where I wanted to go. And it was really confusing. So I stepped back and thought, I want to have a huge impact in the world. I want to be incredibly successful. I want to do something big. This feels like it's sidelining me every time I point it out, so I'm not going to point it out. And so I just somewhat unconsciously sort of slid it under the rug. I saw it all the time, but I never pointed it out. I put my head down and I cranked. And I built a number of different businesses, and I had this incredible moment in my early 30s where I started a company that grew very rapidly from an idea to a for-profit company, and all of a sudden we were going public on the Toronto Stock Exchange in Canada. And we were getting all kinds of accolades all over the place. And this group of men who were running a bunch of banks had set up a fund, and they came to us and said, we'd like to merge with you and take you public. This was considered like, this is success, right? You're going public, that's what success is. And at the 11th hour of our negotiation, just before we were getting ready to go public, they came to me and they said, we don't want you to be the CEO. We want him to be the CEO. And it was my company, my idea. People were there because of me. But I felt quite alone. I was 32 years old. I was not surrounded by a lot of women telling me that I could do this. I was picked at an awful lot by people around me. How many people here feel like they're sort of picked at, try to be fixed all the time? Anyone? Really, that's it? Wow, okay, cool. This is a great country. But I just, it was like, you're not so many different things. But one thing they were very concerned about is my emotional leadership style. I cry a lot. And it made them very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. You're not supposed to be like that as a leader. But yet I'd created this incredible company. And so that was a moment where I caved. We became co-CEOs. And the next day when I walked into my company, every single person looked at me differently. Every one of them. And I consider that like one of my only regrets in my life is that moment in time. But there was learning in it. Fast forward about 20 years, I've been a mentor to over 1,000 young entrepreneurs from around the world. My total passion is to share everything that I learn. And I was sitting with this amazing young woman who'd built up a company, and it was really starting to get some traction. It was really exciting. And I started to listen to what her advisors and her board members started saying to her. You know, at the next round of funding, you're probably not going to be the CEO. We'll probably bring in someone to take this over, because you really don't have what it takes at the next level. And you know, some of these things are quite subtle. You start to believe this when you're surrounded by people, because of course, a lot of us, I mean, I'll talk about myself, this sort of, not necessarily imposter syndrome, but you have this feeling that maybe I don't have what it takes. And so as I watched this, I thought, oh my God, another generation. Really? Not on my watch. So I think there's this very subtle art of how we start to replace women. We're not comfortable with women in power. We really aren't. We just witnessed that in the United States, and that's the last time I'm mentioning the United States. So from my perspective, as I stood back and watched all this, I'm like, I could start another 5 companies. I could go, you know, and I have so many ideas. There's every day I walk down the street, I can think of 10 different things to start. But there's this deep, deep feeling in me that I need to solve this problem of how do we get money into the hands of female innovators? How do we support them on their own terms? Not turn them into men in the existing model that we have, but how do we really support them? And so this is something I've been really paying attention to for decades and really trying to avoid start this company. I really didn't want to start SheEO, but it's something that I just had to. And so if I step back and think, how do you redesign the space and the support network for women to thrive and be incredible in the world? How do you do that? I think it starts with a mindset. And there are major mindset shifts. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. But the first one is we live in a world of winner takes all. This is our economic model. When I started SheEO 3 years ago, 85 people on the planet had the same wealth as 3.5 billion people. That was 3 years ago. Last year, 62. This year, 8 men. This year, 8 men in the world have the same wealth as 3.5 billion people. This is a result of this accumulation of capital, holding on to. And it's totally broken. Like, where do you go from here? We just gave the guys the keys to burn down the house, basically, from my perspective. We need a whole new approach. We need to shift from that winner takes all to this idea, which actually comes from indigenous culture, around the potlatch, of money and gifts are meant to be in motion. We're not meant to hold on to all of this currency. It has a current, it has energy to it. Money needs to flow out into the marketplace. This is something we really need to work on. I'm going to talk about that later. The next piece, which is a major challenge I find everywhere you go, you have to work 24/7 to be successful. Anyone heard that? Like, what the hell? Who came up with that idea? I was at an event recently, and this young 24-year-old hoodie-wearing celebrated dude was the keynote speaker, and there were 350 young entrepreneurs in the audience. And the first question he asked was, how many of you slept less than 6 hours last night? And all these hands went up. And it's like, whoop, whoop, whoop. Like, what? When did that become a badge of honor to not sleep? But it's the mantra out there. And so as I see young people trying to figure out what they're going to do in their life, if the message is you have to work 24/7, and unless your idea goes big, it doesn't matter. Go big or go home. That's what we've got everywhere we go. It's super, super broken. I think we need to move to a place where you can run a business on your own terms. Success has way more definition than going public. There's so many different possibilities, but the only thing that gets on the cover of a magazine is going big. We really need a new approach to that. The other mindset shift, I heard this yesterday too, is moving from scarcity to abundance. And scarcity for me, I just want to talk about this because this is really crazy. Actually, I lied earlier. I'm going to mention the US again right now. In 2008, when the markets crashed, there was a global crash. Does everyone remember that? In the US, we found $17 trillion in 3 weeks to bail out the banks. $17 trillion. And that's like a crazy number. What does that even mean? But let me tell you, it's 600 years without hunger on the planet. 17 trillion. We found it in 3 weeks. There's a ton of money out there. The challenge is where we allocate it, what we value, and where we put it. We have so much. And it's, when I am talking specifically in the entrepreneur space, we have these TV shows in North America called Dragon's Den and Shark Tank. I don't know if you have them here, but the message is, I with money will stand here and you perform like a caged animal to get it. That's not the world I want to live in. We need to reverse that and honor those incredible people who have great ideas and innovations to help us get to a better place. That's what's really special. So at the end of all of this, I just really feel like we're living in a world that was not designed by us or for us. We were not at the table when this was all created, women. And we really, really need to be there for the next round. We need your ideas, we need your leadership. We need women coming forward with their designs and their rethinking of almost every aspect of society. I like to say, everything's broken. What a great time to be alive. So, I'd like to now talk to you a little bit about what I'm doing around this. This is my, sort of thinking, synthesizing years and years of learning into these mindset shifts. And now with SheEO, the idea that we have is to actually step back, aggregate our capital in support of incredible businesses led by women that we think can actually be replicated all over the world in different markets so that we can get to a much better place in this world. So we call it an act of radical generosity. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more this afternoon. What does it mean to be radically generous? My mother, when I first came up with this, was like, why do you have to call it radical? It's just generosity. And I said, yeah, for people that are radically generous, it's just generosity. But most of us aren't living in this space of generosity. And it's something that's a leap forward to practice. So the idea is, and we started this 2 years ago in Canada, 1,000 women come together, contribute $1,100. We create $1 million pool of capital, and then we select 10 women-led companies that are from your local community. So imagine doing this in New Zealand. 1,000 women, $1,100 each, $1 million pool of capital. It's an act of radical generosity because you don't get your money back. But the money is loaned out to these 10 entrepreneurs at 0% interest and paid back over 5 years and then loaned out again. So it's getting our capital in flow. We do a few things really uniquely here. The ventures that are selected are not selected by 5 experts in a room. It's selected by all of the women who contribute capital. 1,000 women go online and get a vote and pick from their heart and from their passion and from their intuition. I would trust the intuition of 1,000 women over 5 experts in a room any day. Any day. And really, this is, I've been on the other side of the fence. I've been a venture capitalist. I've been part of this existing model, and it's completely made up, totally broken, and we need a redo. So this is the real rethinking of everything. The other thing that we do that's quite different is how the money gets divided up. So when we select these companies, they come together for a retreat for the weekend. I'm going to show you a video of that in a minute. And they divide up the money themselves. And we give them 2 parameters. You can't give it all to one, and you can't divide it up evenly. So what do you think if a bunch of women just became best friends in a room? What would they want to do? Everyone gets $100,000, we'll go home happy, right? Big hug, love you, right? Yeah. So but the reason we do this is because women have a hard time negotiating on their own behalf. So we create an incredibly safe space. We help you understand your negotiating styles, and you come together as a group and figure out how to divide up that capital because, as I said earlier, we only have one model of doing that, which is winner takes all. We pick one, we bet it all on red, giant casino we're living in. This way is, what is the best way to allocate the money that has been very radically generously contributed by all of these women? we turn it over to those ventures to be the stewards and to come up with what do you need, but what's also the best use of this capital for all of you together. It's a very, very different approach. Can you cue the video, please? Hi, I'm Vicki Saunders, founder of SheEO, and we are at this most incredibly beautiful farmhouse, which is owned by the Slater family. Abby and Lisa are activators hosting this amazing retreat for the weekend.
My name is Barbara Alinker, and my company is the Alinker Inventions.
My name is Patrice Mousseau. My company is Satya Organics.
My name is Lana Novikova. I'm a founder and CEO of Heartbeat AI Technologies.
My name is Devin Fiddler. I call myself the Chief Changemaker and SheEO of She Native Goods.
My name is Haley Mullins. I am the inventor of Sleep Belt, and I'm here because I am a top 5 finalist.
I am so fortunate that a whole bunch of women have selected my company to be here, and I feel incredible gratitude that happened.
The timing of just gaining access to this network and capital couldn't have been planned better if I had tried.
It just feels like a whole world of possibilities opened up.
I'm really looking forward to connecting with all of the other women in the group and connecting not only as friends but as peer mentors. It's always good to have people in your inner circle that believe in you, that are doing really great things.
I'm looking forward to learn from the mentors, maybe hone my pitch better, make it stronger.
This is going to be one of those turning moments in my life, like not just the business, but in my life. This is an epic moment in time for me. It's hard to believe that it's actually happening.
Every one of us is here to create something really big in the world and to bring your dreams out. It's hard to do it alone. So imagine if we actually helped each other get there. I'm hoping that just really changing the environment gives people a chance to kind of relax and to think a little bit differently about how they want to create a culture of sharing and collaboration and generosity.
So I'm going to go up to the flip chart and capture the agreements of what you're going to need to be fully present today.
This weekend here in this beautiful nature with this amazing women feels like a peace. It's almost like a meditation retreat.
Both Laura and I are so impressed with the vulnerability that people came with and the sense of trust that they really quickly established with one another.
As a collective, they came up with a plan where the $500,000 was enough to enable each one of their companies to go to the next level.
I think being a SheEO means being courageous in your ask and brave.
The pool of resources and the pool of knowledge and connections that come with this amazing group of radically generous women, I don't know where else you find that in one place.
It is very extraordinary to have a group of women that you can lean into and actually use their brilliance and get their experience.
It's a deep wisdom that can transfer the face of business. That was the best women can offer to each other.
SheEO is changing the world. SheEO is changing people's perspectives on what it means to be in business. We can actually make change, big change, a business at a time. This is making the world that we all deserve.
So as you can see, it wasn't, when the media first asked us how we were doing that, they wanted to write a story, they said, about like a cat fight in a boardroom. Seriously. And at the end of it, when the money was divided up, they said, so who got the most? We want Vicki and the winner to come for the interview. Right? It's super hard to, so we said no. And so now we no longer disclose how much each company gets. We just talk about the range because it's not about winners at all. It's about allocating this capital in a way. And so we really create a very different environment. You can imagine none of these people knew each other when they came together on a Friday at noon. And they opened up their financials. They shared everything. They went totally vulnerable to figure out what they each need. They pushed back on each other. They shared resources. It's a completely different sort of environment than the normal funding environment that you go to. So I just want to talk to you about a few of the companies. This is called the Alinker. It's created by Barbara, who was in the previous video. She was walking through a park with her mother, and they were walking by some people, some older people who were using walkers. And her mother said, "Over my dead body, will I ever use one of those?" And she's a designer, and she started thinking, I wonder how you would redesign the wheelchair, the walker, to help people move and still have dignity. And she designed this, the Alinker. And so it's for people who have lost mobility. They can move it with their feet. It's a super cool looking bicycle, isn't it? People love it. There's like big smiles when people see it. But you're at eye level, which is the other big thing that she's shifted. Because in a wheelchair, everyone has to look down, you have to look up. This keeps you at eye level. It's really interesting. She did a big deal in China with Li Ka-shing's foundation. They gave away 40,000 wheelchairs last year, and they're switching to Alinkers. So this is the power of the network and this is a woman who literally she's so incredible, I'm gonna cry. Sorry. Yeah, it's like for 14 years, she's done 14 prototypes to build this. And had a really hard time getting funding. Sorry, oh my God, sorry about this. Anyway, I'm super passionate, obviously, about what we're doing. But this to me really represents the power of what's under the radar that we can all recognize, and we want her to build her company in a way that really works, that she can find a great price tag for this so that it can scale globally. She talks about this as a new vehicle for social change, which I think is really powerful. So Barbara's brand new. She just got funded a few weeks ago. This is a company called Abigo, breathable food wrap. So all of our food wrap is toxic, and it cuts off the air, so food dies immediately as soon as it's wrapped. An avocado turns brown pretty much immediately, right, when you wrap it in plastic wrap. This stays green for 4 days. So it was designed by an amazing woman in Victoria, BC. And this is one of the power of the network that starts to come through on something like this. She went to so many people to get funded, and most of the people writing checks are men, and most of them said to her, "What are you going to do, take on Johnson & Johnson? That's not going to happen. They've got the wrap covered." And she said, "But food is meant to breathe." Anyway, we saw this and thought it was absolutely brilliant. The women in the network voted for her, and she was validated by hundreds and hundreds of women with this idea. And then she started her coaching. And on the first day of her coaching, our coach said to her, "You're a visionary." And she said, "I am?" Because she's been told her whole life, you're too creative and you have too many ideas. Can you imagine? Didn't someone say this last night at the cocktail party? A little bit about that? Yeah. So I think this is one of the things when you're surrounded by a network of radically generous women who validate your idea and say, "Oh my God, that's awesome," you start to stand a little taller. And what Tony says about her first year with SheEO is that she literally has better posture. And she doesn't even mean just standing tall. It's how she feels being surrounded by all of these incredible women who've given her so much more confidence. And the last one is Skipperado. This is a community-supported fishery. She fishes through traditional methods, and then you subscribe to buy fish, and then it's shipped to you. So kind of like community-supported agriculture. Do you have something like that here? Cool. So this is growing really well in Canada, and that's a picture of her last week. We served her salmon at our gala in Toronto when we announced the new companies for this year. And Tony said to me, "Would it be okay if I put a little card on each table for people to sign up as new members, because it's a whole new group of people, 250 women in a room?" And I'm like, "Yes, go for it." And her goal was $3,000. And she sold $14,000 worth of fish memberships that night in the room, and that's her face, and that's the pile of cards. I think I want to just share this because one of the things that's so unbelievable about what we have in our networks, we make 85% of purchasing decisions as women. So what matters to these companies is not just the original capital, these 0% interest loans that you provide, but becoming early customers to help her grow her business. Encouraging us, sharing your networks, sharing your expertise, all of that is part of the package of helping. So how's it going so far? In the first year, 40% average revenue growth of all the companies. When they ask for help each month, they get help within 24 hours of the ask. So imagine an on-demand network. So in our first year, we had 500 women, and we picked 5 companies. So this 100-to-1 ratio, someone's always paying attention. So as a venture that gets selected into this network, you get 500 women on your team. How many people here are entrepreneurs? Cool, okay, great. As I mentioned before, we have this model. Sometimes it's hard to understand this, but $100,000 is paid back already. So 20% of the money is paid back every year. So that allowed us to create another company, to fund another company this year. So the idea is if you do this 5 years in a row, so if you did this 5 years in a row here, you would have a perpetual fund forever that would pass on to your daughters and your granddaughters and your great-granddaughters. So your one-time gift of $1,000 is pooled together, loaned out, paid back, and loaned out again. This is what we're talking about having this gift in motion as a legacy, as a perpetual fund. I'm just going to go through these. So far we have 15 companies. We started 18 months ago. And our goal is to get to 1 million women activators as soon as possible. 10,000 ventures funded each year, and $1 billion fund that lives in perpetuity. And for those bankers in the room who are like, $1 billion is nothing, Vicki, I get it. It's really the start for me. $1 billion fund that's crowdsourced $1,000 at a time by women all over the world in support of women's dreams is the starting point for a better world. So what could this possibly become? Imagine if you had 1 million women activators all together and $1 billion fund. Would it be a bank of the future? Is it the start of a bank? Could be. How about 10,000 companies every single year that are selected by women because they're about creating a better world that we want to buy from and talk to our friends about? Amazon for women? How about a learning lab? And this one is the really big one. We get a lot of people applying, and it's not a company that's necessarily creating a better world. And one of my 85-year-old mentors has said to me, Vicki, one of the worst things you can do, this do no harm comment yesterday from Denise, is to just get women creating the same kinds of companies that are digging bigger holes in our planet. That's not what we want to do. We want to pick companies that are doing business in a new way, that create sustainable jobs, that are local, that are connected, that are doing good. That's very, very important. Those are the kinds of companies we're selecting. A media company? Wouldn't it be amazing to have a magazine full of amazing stories of what women are doing in the world? It's so hard to find this. All kinds of success, how it's defined. For me, this is, we've been approached by several documentary film companies wanting to show what happens in the room when the money gets divided up. Because every time that happens, it's just overwhelming how they get to know each other so quickly, and how when you create a trusting environment and a safe environment, how we all dream bigger. This environment that we're living in mostly for business is very unforgiving. You screw up and you get hammered. Imagine being in a place where you're surrounded by radically generous people who continue to encourage you. You get a hug when you need it, you get a push when you need it. Radical generosity. That's the spirit that we're trying to create underneath all of this. So for now, I want to go to this one. We're here, the bottom left. And the goal is to get to 1 million women in regions all over the world. I'm here today because Teresa brought me here and wanted New Zealand to be one of the first countries outside of North America to replicate this model and to grow it here. We have 150 regions around the world who have applied just through hearing about this on social media and word of mouth, women spreading the word. Yesterday I was on a radio program, was it New Zealand Business? 9 to Noon. And 34 people went to our website and signed up to be an activator right after. Isn't that unbelievable? That's never happened before. I'm like, there's something special here. So I know Teresa's goal is to get to 1,000 by the time I leave. I have 6 more days. Anyway, if this idea resonates, I'd love to hear some questions from you about it. This is a link you can go to on our website and put in your name if you're interested in being part of this. The one thing I want to just leave you with, and I think we're going to go to Q&A after this, is that, you know, I sort of step back and think about, like, I have such a strong vision on this idea. I've had lots of different ideas in the past for businesses. But there's something here, there's such a moment in time right now for women in the world. We are so desperately needed. The way that we think, the way that we look at the world, the way that we take care of everyone. We don't pick one of our children to win. We try and find a way for all of them to win. We need this spirit back in the world to help us get to a better place. We need a whole new model in every sector of society, and we need your dreams. And imagine if you had a network of radically generous women supporting you in what you want to do in the world. How would you dream bigger? And how would you act differently if you were radically generous to yourself? This is something has very much worked on me in the last year and a half. I'm so much nicer than I used to be. Every time when I go to answer an email that's a little bit crusty, do you know what that means? Sort of grumpy. I get grumpy emails sometimes. I ask myself, what is the radically generous response to this? Like, I know what my testosterone boy response is, but what is the radically generous response? And it's made me happier. I mean, there's all kinds of research around generosity, makes you more, you have better wellness. But there is something very interesting in this. And so instead of next time you see somebody and they do something that kind of bothers you, what is that radically generous response? This is the kind of world that I want to live in, and I want to thank you very much for allowing me to share that today.